No foundation.
I can only speak to what everybody's calendar is different. Everybody has different needs. If you're a fall sport coach, you are in season. So housing is provided before school starts. That's pretty standard business. So every sport is different. I can only speak to ours.
Let's put up Exhibit 46, which I believe is your evaluation for 9 and 10. Let's go back to 44. I'm sorry. Exhibit 44 is your evaluation for 8 and 9. And on page 2, at the top, there's this comment starting with, "Be aware of the people who are working hard on your behalf." I'm not going to read it all in the record. But was there a discussion in your review about this comment?
May I ask the year again, Mr. Noonan?
08, 09.
08, 09? Most likely Jenny Bramer.
As you sit here today, you don't have any specific recollection.
I would say most likely that would be Jenny Bramer.
But was there a discussion about the comment with Jenny Bramer?
Not a discussion, just she most likely read that when Mr. Schemmel and she and I were in the evaluation.
Let's go to Exhibit 46. This is your evaluation for 9, 10. And here, under Management and Administration, this is the year in which you received a 2 for appropriate interaction with support staff, correct?
Yes, 9, 10, yes.
And you recall this evaluation meeting?
I do.
Mr. Schemmel and Ms. Bramer were in the meeting?
No.
Mr. Sturck. Mr. Sturck had basically just arrived within the last couple of months. Correct?
Yes, correct.
And if we go to the top of page 2, second paragraph. There. That's good. No, that's fine. Thank you. And then this is the comment, "It's not okay to yell at staff or dress them down no matter the circumstances. Additionally, it's not okay to hide information from the administration. They are your allies and necessary for your campus relationships and for the program's big-scale coverage." And you attribute that, at least in part, to the incident that took place in Memphis?
The yell or dress them down, yes.
Yeah. And in the meeting, let's go back to the Memphis.
Since I don't have this in front of me, can I know the date of our signing this?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Go to the last page. It's July. 2000.
Thank you.
In the Memphis incident in 2010, I'm not going to go through the whole story again, but as I understand it, you learned about the potential problem of the ineligibility of the 2 sisters when you arrived in Memphis?
When I was at the hotel.
And then at some point in time, as I understand your testimony, you had a meeting with your team in one of the ballrooms?
We landed and we're going to do a walkthrough in the hotel, and we use a It's like we simulate like we're on a court. It's not a meeting, chairs and tables type.
Right. And it was at that meeting, you testified on direct examination that there was some buzz amongst your team about this issue?
Yes, when the two sisters came in the room, they created the buzz.
And you learned at that point in time that Mr. Larson had encountered the two sisters and said to them words to the effect that there was an issue, he's looking into it, and tried to reassure them that it would be okay?
Objection, compound. Right.
It's compound.
What did you learn that Mr. Larson had said to the two sisters?
That they potentially could be ineligible.
Now, after that meeting, and again, the next day was the day that you had this encounter with Mr. Larson in the lobby. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But even before then, on the day prior, after the meeting in the ballroom, you encountered Mr. Larson and briefly spoke to him about the incident, did you not?
Before or after that? What timing? I didn't see Mr. Larson. I saw Jenny Bramer and Tammy Stevens. They were the first to inform me of what potentially was going on. Mr. Larson at the time was, I think, trying to run it down. The first I heard Mr. Larson was when the two athletes came in the room and said Mr. Larson spoke to them in the elevator. That's the first they came in, Mr. Larson did not.
Per the witness's deposition on August 27, 2014, Volume 2, page 196, line 22.
Can you just hold on a second?
There you go.
22 to where?
To line 3 of page 197.
No problem.
Question. All right, did you talk to Jay Larson, who was in Memphis too? Was he not? Answer, yes. Question, did you talk to Jay Larson on Friday at all about the issue? Answer, briefly. He was still on the phone kind of getting stuff figured out, correct?
Right. And that was
So
my...
you did
Jenny was
talk-
more the conduit of the information because he and others were trying to get it solved.
But you did briefly talk to Mr. Larson on Friday after you learned what you had learned from the two girls, correct?
I may have, he might have been in the lobby too. I don't want to say he wasn't, but we didn't have extended conversation. He was trying to get it run down.
Right, but you did talk to him at least briefly on Friday.
I'm sure I did.
And you didn't yell at him on Friday, did you?
I did not.
And you understood that he, as a person in compliance, was trying to get the situation resolved. Is that correct?
I did.
And you said that later that evening when you got to your room, you received some telephone calls?
Yes.
And you understood, did you not, that Mr. Larson, in order to run this down, was going to have to talk to the twins' father? Is that correct?
The sisters?
Yes.
The problem was the other parents. I had no idea that they were calling every parent of every athlete on my team.
They didn't call every parent of every athlete on your team.
Well, I didn't know. I was unaware of that. But it wasn't the sister's father did not call me. It was other parents that called me.
Right. But you understood that Mr. Larson, to do his job, was going to have to run this down with Mr. Father of the twins.
Yes.
To get his information straight so he could go to the NCAA and get your kids cleared, correct?
Yes.
Right. And did you also understand that in the course of doing that, there had been a suggestion that not only did the twins' father potentially receive money to come on this trip, but also one of your other players' mothers had similarly received money, correct?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Well,
Was I made aware that other people were receiving money?
Were you made aware that there was a suggestion that possibly other parents had received money to travel to Memphis?
Only from those other parents.
Right. And did you understand that Mr. Larson called them to get his facts straight as to whether or not they had received money or not?
I only have what they told me, not Jay. I had no idea.
Right. So you understood, for instance, one of the players' moms called you and said that she was upset by the fact that she had been called. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
But Mr. Larson calling the mother, he was just doing his job, wasn't he?
He asked her if she paid, she conveyed to me that she can afford to go watch her kid play. And she doesn't take lightly someone challenging her that she's cheating and on and on.
Well, he didn't challenge her for cheating.
Well,
He was trying to get the situation clarified so your team didn't have a problem in the tournament, wasn't he?
Compound, argumentative speculation.
I can only tell you what I received, only the call from the parent and the message from the parent, which is what eventually drove me to call Mr. Sturck, who I hadn't hardly met, quite late at night.
You didn't call Mr. Larson that night, did you?
No, I did not.
And then it was the next day that you came down to the lobby to go to the venue, the arena for
The bus, yeah.
a practice or a shoot around. And that's when you ran into Mr. Larson, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were the one who initiated the encounter with Mr. Larson, true?
He was sitting and he stood up and walked towards me. I was walking to the bus.
You initiated the incident, did you not?
That's vague and ambiguous.
You initiated the incident, did you not?
I was walking to the bus. He stood up and walked towards me, and I engaged in conversation.
You were the first to speak then, correct?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
And you lit into him, did you not?
Your interpretation, I was upset.
You were yelling at Mr. Larson in the lobby of the hotel, were you not?
I don't dispute that whatsoever. I've apologized profusely
When did you apologize to Mr. Larson?
after we returned.
When?
I can't recall the exact date. Sometime after the Final Four.
And as you're standing there yelling at Mr. Larson, he didn't say anything back to you, did he?
I don't recall.
He didn't yell back at you, did he?
I didn't think so.
And you were in a public hotel lobby. You had your gear on, your San Diego State gear. Is that correct?
I was on my way to practice.
And you described your own conduct later on as being inexcusable, correct?
Correct.
And it was inexcusable.
I don't dispute that at all.
And Mr. Larson got your girls cleared so they could play. Is that right?
They did play, yes.
But after he got them cleared through the NCAA in Indianapolis, true?
I'm sorry?
After he got them cleared through the NCAA in Indianapolis, is that correct?
I don't know the chain of command of it, but he was the point person, and the word came to us that they would not be, I don't know whether the dad didn't get money, or I don't know exactly what came of it, other than that they were okay to play.
Mr. Larson did his job, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. In 2009 and 10, and then after Mr. Sturck is there for a while, you were able to convince him to change your direct report to away from Ms. Bramer. Is that correct?
Yes?
So when you were reviewed in 2010 and 2011, you can put up Exhibit 45.
It's a duplicate of 37 that's already been.
Which one is it?
30, 35, it's 37.
37?
Yep.
Michaela, could you put up 37 instead? Apologies. Now, this was shown during your direct examination. And I think when we went to page 5 and went to the signatures, this was you at the top, Mr. Sturk on the bottom. I think you said this was Jenny Bramer in the middle, but that's not Ms. Bramer's signature, is it?
I don't think we could know. I mean, I don't think I could definitively tell him. I think we even, I don't know.
Well, let's go back to, if we go back to exhibit,
But it kind of looks to me like it could be hers, but I don't, it's not over, Holland.
let's look at exhibit 46, page 5. See Ms. Bramer's signature there?
Yeah, that doesn't look like it.
And so if we go to exhibit 37, the signature page on page 5, that's Mr. Wicker, is it not?
I don't know.
And do you recall sitting in on evaluations with Mr. Sturk and Mr. Wicker?
In 12 and 13, yes. In 11, I'm not sure that he was on board yet, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's his.
Would refresh your recollection if I were to say Mr. Wicker came in about June of 2011.
Okay.
So now, so when this evaluation is done, if that's true, assuming I'm correct, he had only been there for a couple months, correct?
Correct on that.
Mr. Wicker, Mr. Sturk had been there since spring of 2010, correct?
March 2010, correct.
And you no longer had Jenny Bramer doing your evaluation, correct?
I would admit that I thought that was Jenny Bramer's signature, so I would agree with your assumption that that's Mr. Wicker if he had been on board at that time. I just can't remember.
A couple of points here. On your one loss record on page 1, that was, I think, 12 and 17. That was a little, took a dip from the really great year you had before. Took a little dip in 2010 and 11, then you went back up in
Four seniors and graduated point guard.
Now on page 3, under team GPA, which is the item there, your team GPA is now, it says it's 2.11. Did you ever miss a bonus because you didn't hit the 2.25 in your contract?
Not that I recall.
And then let's go to 2000.
I believe, may I add more context?
Go ahead.
There was also an athletics director parameter when that was put in for mitigating circumstances. So if, as I recall it to be read, A was APR, which could technically be interpreted as unfair based on what I stated earlier about how you're really being evaluated on something that could have happened before you got there. B was hard and fast GPA. C was the athletics director's discretion.
Now let's look at 2011-12, which I think is Exhibit 47.
It's another two.
Yeah, let us know.
36.
36 instead. Your Honor, instead of 47 will be 36. And again, if we go to the last page, this is, looks like it's signed by
Oh, there you
you.
go. Yep.
Looks like the same person signed the 2012 as your supervisor. And then there's Mr. Stirk, and then this is also signed by Sally Roush, the Vice President of Business and Financial Affairs. If we go to the, and is it your recollection that Mr. Wicker was in your evaluation in 11 and 12?
Yes.
And then if we go to the team GPA on page 3,
Oh, this is 36.
36.
No, 36.
I'm sorry.
That's all the wrong.
Your team GPA at that point in time was 2.291, 2.215 unofficial for the spring.
Yeah, oftentimes your evaluation was done before the spring semester and the spring semester grades were in. So they had to give a best guess. I mean, it just depended. I would guess that's why it says unofficial.
Let's talk a little bit. You told us on your direct examination that you had 100% graduation rate of your students who stayed eligible for all and played for all 4 years.
Who played for me for 4 years, yes.
But let's be clear. You, during your tenure there, you brought in approximately 37 student athletes on scholarship. Is that correct?
I'd have to count, but three to five a year.
And it's correct that approximately a dozen of those either dropped out or transferred.
Well, then they wouldn't have. I'm not sure what your question is.
Of the 37, is it correct that approximately a dozen of them either left school, dropped out of school, or transferred to another university?
I wouldn't want to answer under oath until I wrote it out. I couldn't speak to a dozen, no. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but it's a period of 8 years. You're saying over a period of 8 years, did a dozen people leave?
Yes.
I'd rather document that out before I would answer to a dozen.
Okay. But again, without, we'll get, I think Ms. White will be here to testify. I'm pretty white. But you don't dispute that not all of your players that came in graduated, correct?
If they didn't play for 4 years, then they probably didn't, or in most cases, to what you alluded to, graduated from other places.
Or didn't graduate from other places. Is that correct?
Or didn't graduate. But
And some-
you spoke to transfers too, so that's what I was speaking to.
And from time to time, your students became ineligible, correct?
Yes.
Now, I wanted to talk just briefly when we're talking academics about Ms. White. When you were on direct examination, you told of a situation in which a student athlete failed to take a take-home exam and as such had an academic problem. Do you recall that?
Failed to take a take-home exam?
Yeah.
I don't recall someone who failed to take a take-home exam.
Do you recall testifying about
Do you have a time period? That'll help, Mr. Noonan.
2012?
Yeah. Well, she took the take-home exam. She had 10 days to do it.
But she didn't take it within the 10 days. did
No, she did. She did it at about 10 o'clock the night of the deadline in a hotel room on the road. If we're referring to the same athlete in 2012.
I recall some testimony to the effect, ma'am, that you blamed Bree White for not telling you that the student had a take-home exam and had failed to complete it before going on the road trip. Do you recall testimony to that effect?
Yes, it was Tammy Reese was the person on my staff that brought it to me. a student had a take-home exam, and a take-home open book exam. I know more of these details after the fact. Had a take-home open book exam that was assigned at some point on the syllabus in the semester. In the time period, she had 10 days up until whatever the day was, and I don't want to misspeak the date. We were on a road trip. Every one of my coaches. And the point that I made to Tammy Reese and Bree was if she had 10 days to do a take-home exam, why didn't someone say she didn't do it yet, she hasn't completed it yet, because we wouldn't have taken her on the trip. Finishing her exam that was open book was more important to do than to play in a game, and we were unaware that she still had an exam to even do.
And you blame Bree White, the academic advisor, for not telling you that, correct?
I blame all of us, Mr. Newton.
Well, let's take a look at Exhibit 139. Take a look at Exhibit 139. Could you bring up the top? You better include the address. And again, I'm not going to read this all into the record, except you say in the second, there's a reference to a take-home exam. You say it's a failure of all of us. Quote, a targeted student athlete, unless I'm wrong in policy, shouldn't be in a position to make that decision. I nor Tammy had no idea she had this final, or I would have left her home to do it. And you, in part, blame Bree White for not telling you that one of your students had 10 days to take a take-home exam and hadn't done it?
Yes, I believe that is the job of an academic advisor with, in this case, 2 to 3 targeted student athletes. This athlete was admitted specially because of some special circumstances in her personal life. So she was targeted. She was being measured by the NCAA. So with a targeted student athlete, in other words, we're not asking an academic advisor to stay on top of 15 students and what their exam schedule is. That would be unrealistic. We divided that amongst our coaches to make sure everybody was on top of things. But for our targeted student athletes is where we leaned on our academic advisors, and we expected that their position would be not to do for, but to inform us if somebody's not doing something, because we're the ones who have an ability to make sure that they do.
Well, if you would look at the email string below, is communications between Ms. White and the professor. Is that correct? Have you seen this before?
Can I peek at it real quick?
Sure.
I didn't see this till the other day. No, this is from Tammy, I believe. Tammy Reese. She sent it to Tammy Reese. Yes, I read this. I've read this.
Yeah, if we go on to page 2 of the exhibit.
Where Bree said, here's the...
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
The second paragraph. And this is the professor, Dr. Poynting, saying the final exam was online and open to be taken for 10 whole days, 240 hours. It is an online exam and essentially an open book exam for the organized student. I don't see why you should get to resit the exam given that you had 10 days to do it. So she didn't take the exam, did she?
No, she did. She didn't do well on it, to the best of my ability. She took the exam because we had an event that evening and on the road trip we were on that she was excused from to do the exam. That's when I first found out about it.
Well, I'll just leave it at this, for this is in evidence, so anyone can read this.
Okay.
Make that determination. This student repeatedly missed tutoring sessions,
Yes,
failed to show up for academic advising. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And you would receive notices from time to time from the academic support staff, this student was just blowing off tutoring and academic advising, correct?
I think there were some circumstances around that, but I don't dispute what you're saying.
Right. And again, doesn't the student at some point in time have to be accountable?
The student totally has to be accountable. But as I asked she was a targeted student for a reason. She had been brought in under special circumstances.
Right.
With targeted student athletes, they had different parameters than some of the other student athletes. And how she was going to be able to have success was going to dictate many student athletes that followed her. I don't dispute, nor do I discredit your implication that she should have been on top of things. But I think when we agreed to take her on, we knew that she was bringing some things with her.
Well, you knew because you were the one who recruited her, correct?
Well, we didn't recruit. We brought her to Colleen Evans and Jay Larson helped us make the decision. We didn't recruit anyone. We didn't. If we didn't think they had the ability to graduate, we did not bring in several talented athletes. So this was a unique case. She had tested out of some math. She had tested high on her IQ tests, but had a very tough home circumstance and a very tough, large public high school.
And she eventually became ineligible at the end of the...
Right then. She became ineligible right then, in 2012. She did not compete in 2013.
And again, you were also repeatedly critical of Ms. White, the academic advisor. You told people that Ms. White was incompetent, correct?
Are we talking about this specific situation?
No, I'm just talking about in general.
There was some history there, yes.
Did you ever tell Ms. White that she was incompetent to her face?
May I answer if it's not a yes or no?
Can you try and answer it yes or no? And if you can't, we'll go to the next question.
I think this precedes when I first arrived in 05. So that's what I'm trying to go to. But if you'd rather I wait,
I'm just
I can
asking
do
if
that.
you ever told Ms. White that you felt she was incompetent in her work as an academic advisor. Did you ever tell her that to her face?
In those words, I don't think that I did. But we did have discussions. I think on the record that she is a wonderful person, and I preferred her to be a great role model for our student athletes, which is what she had been for a large number of years. When I first arrived, she was the academic advisor.
She was the academic advisor to teams other than women's basketball.
No, when I first arrived, she was the academic advisor for women's basketball. And their APR was in the 800s. Several people had left ineligible. An athlete was walking in to tell me that she was flunking out of school. So I was concerned, and we had some initial meetings. So at that point, we had some concerns. I'm going way back.
And you told her this, you told people such as her Lucas Moosman that Ms. White was incompetent. Is that correct?
I'm sure I did.
Did you have any concern that you might be jeopardizing or endangering Ms. White's position at the university by telling people that she was incompetent?
No, because I think a soundbite can sound as it is. I've told you what I've told you. I think she's a fantastic person. I thought she was an advocate for our team. I thought she was a role model for our team. I thought it was better if she didn't work directly with our team and was able to be a resource for them as a person, as a human being. So I never, ever suggested that she shouldn't be in that role.
You just wanted her to work for other teams, not your team?
I don't dispute her success rate with lots of people. I felt it wasn't a good fit for us, yes.
She has a doctorate?
She does. She earned her master's and doctorate while she was working at San Diego State as a counselor.
I want to ask you one question about one of the exhibits, something you said on direct examination. Could you take a look at exhibit 546?
546?
If we have just a moment, Your Honor.
No, we didn't.
We didn't check. Okay, so you didn't check. No check.
Sure.
Mr. Chapin, I don't have 546.
That's all right. We'll put it up on the screen here. And if you could,
John, could the court inquire if she can read this when it's an
we're
email?
He's going to blow it up, I think.
Thank you.
And this is embarrassing, and I'm going to up my prescription.
Okay.
So,
Here, this is an email you wrote to Adam. I think it's Adam Barrett. Help Tammy with this. Explain your schedule ahead and stress how important it is that she communicates with Tammy as well as works forward to completing her counseling. Explain that she does not communicate. Regardless of that, you believe her and support her counseling. You must hold her to a 6 a.m. run. Let's back out to the top. You recall that the person that's being discussed here is the same person who was the subject of the discussion about the take-home.
yeah, she had missed a workout. I remember this scenario. She had missed a workout. She was late for a workout.
We talked about her counseling. Is that
Right.
correct?
She had missed, but the reason that the context of what made this occur is she had missed a workout and then was upset, and then there was more to the story. You know, there's lots of reasons why they miss a workout. She had missed a workout.
Well, she missed her counseling, did she not? Let's go back down. Go to the page before.
Your Honor, may I give the witness this document so she can see the whole thing, or not this
Sure,
bits
take it out.
and
Yeah.
pieces?
Well, yes, but I only saw like it was a September workout schedule.
And there's a second page.
Any objection?
I have no objection.
Huh?
I have no objection.
Yeah, sure.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Sure, thank you. If it's the same document.
It's Exhibit
It is the same
546. That's what we're on?
It's the same document,
Sure it is.
but it's ours is redacted on the screen.
And as is this one, I think.
Not totally, may not have been totally redacted.
So this, may I ask who Tamara McMillan is?
I don't know.
What's the question?
Well, that's who the email was to and
I
from.
don't know, I didn't, Mr. Newton.
Here's the question. This email starts, this whole chain starts with an email about one of your students showing up late, paper not being completed, needs RWS tutoring, no drop-in, tutoring has been requested. Do you see that? Are you following me?
Yes.
And then we go to the first page of the exhibit. Bottom, Tammy Reese is telling you, wanted to keep you in the loop as to what is going on with blank. I'm not doing any disciplinary action until I hear from someone that we have a handle on our situation. And then there's the email to Adam Barrett telling Mr. Barrett you must hold her to a 6 a.m. run. Do you see that?
Yeah, that's why I saw September and assumed it was a workout.
Right. So but the question was, the other day you told us that you did not use running laps or any type of physical punishment.
That would be true.
But this email would seem to indicate that you're telling Mr. Barrett that she has to go on a 6 a.m. run because of the incidents that are described in the email.
Well, I don't think I wouldn't draw that same conclusion.
Let's go to Dan's. Let's go to Exhibit 099. This was discussed in your direct examination.
I'm sorry.
099. things already. Put up 099.
Is that it?
Yes.
It is.
It is, Your
All
Honor.
right. I think you can, if he blows it up, just turn it in and see it.
Go up to the top. This is again a list of your 5 support needs. And then we talked about one, the facility, or at least you testified about. And I wanted to talk about here this item 3, food, housing, training table, a place to eat in or around the AAC. AAC was what?
Aztec Athletic Center, now Fowler Athletic Center, where our offices were.
But these needs that you're talking about, these weren't unique to women's basketball, were they?
A place to eat around the AAC? No, that would be applicable to everybody.
And the item 2, summer school, ability to take one class at a time, that wasn't a problem or a situation that was unique to women's basketball.
Actually, it was.
How's that?
We're one of the few sports that trains both semesters. So if you're a fall sport athlete, you can have all of spring and summer to get healthy before the fall. As a women's basketball player, you have a certain amount of classes that you have to take in each semester, and if you don't fulfill that, you become academically ineligible, either through units or through GPA. If you supplement GPA in the summer, then you can just focus on units during the academic year. So our hope, it was a cost issue. It was the same, you still had to pay room, board, etc., whether they took 1 or 2 classes. That hard cost didn't change. So you were encouraged to take 2 classes. We were requesting that for certain students, they'd be able to just take 1 class at a time so they can really focus on something. If it's going to be a math class or a foreign language or something, 1 class at a time so they can get a GPA bump.
But the other fall sports, there are other sports that were affected by this as well, correct?
Fall and spring sports.
Correct. So my question was, this wasn't a situation or complaint that was unique to women's basketball.
Well, I think it was, Mr. Noonan, because we set things up differently than even our men's basketball counterparts. They preferred, if I can recall, they like to load up 16 units in the fall so they can drop a class. We had the other opinion of it. We prefer to take something in the summer and then build on that to get a strong GPA.
But this wasn't a limitation that was put in place solely for women's basketball.
This was a request to spend the money to do it.
Right. But it wasn't, the fact that you couldn't take 1 class at a time, that was not a situation unique to women's basketball, was it?
Oh, yes, correct.
And Your Honor, I'll be a few more minutes after lunch, and so I think it would be a good time to break.
We got 3 minutes, but, you're,
I'm not going to be, I have 2 other areas.
I think it's a good time to break.
Okay.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for lunch. Don't talk about the case. Be back here at 1:30 and we'll proceed.